listening to KPFT Houston.
It's a little scary on Earth tonight. In all the darkness, it's kind of hard to see the light. We need more people with compassionate and fewer commandos. Stand up for what's right on Vegan World Radio. Vegan World Radio. Vegan World Radio. Vegan World Radio. It's time to live. It's time to grow. Vegan World Radio. Vegan World Radio. No more animal rodeos. Standing up for animals is a different kind of fight. When corporations keep the truth far from our sight, but the ones who see the truth can't ever let it go. The truth is alive on Vegan World Radio. Vegan World Radio. Vegan World Radio. It's time to live. It's time to grow. Vegan World Radio. Vegan World Radio. An animal-free fandango. Climate chaos, a dog and planetary plight. Temperatures reaching annual record heights. If the world ends tomorrow, I'll see you in the afterglow. The postmortem's live on Vegan World Radio. Vegan World Radio. Vegan World Radio. It's time to live. It's time to grow. Vegan World Radio. Vegan World Radio. The One Health message in stereo. Rocket leaves right now. You've got a ticket for this flight. Did you think we'd let you leave alone? The stars are burning bright. Strap in tight, ready for takeoff. Ignition, here we go. It's Monday night and time for your Vegan World Radio. Vegan World Radio. Vegan World Radio. It's time to live. It's time to grow. Vegan World Radio. Vegan World Radio. Let love be your dynamo.
All right, it's Monday morning and it's Monday night. Jeez, I don't even know what day it is anymore. It's Monday night, and that means it's Vegan World Radio with Dr. Crystal Heath, the veterinarian, and Skyjack Morgan. This week, we're talking mostly about it's Monkey Business Monday. I think that's why I'm messed up. It's Monkey Business Monday. You're on kpft.org streaming live or 90.1 FM in Houston. I'm so glad to be back, and I'm glad to see your face, Crystal.
Yeah, good to see you too. How's your day today?
Oh, I'm just trying to stay cool. I'm just trying to stay cool. It's hot,
Yeah.
and that's what everyone. I know it's every summer everyone says that, but I like to remind myself when I'm feeling too hot that this is I'm trying to appreciate it, practice an attitude of gratitude because this is the coldest summer that I'm likely to experience for the rest of my life.
That's true, I guess. Well, unless we have, I don't know, some sort of ice age situation because of nuclear war, which...
Yeah, barring that or myself moving, I suppose. If I move, maybe I can move to to live with the penguin. Wherever that penguin country that's getting tariffed, I can move there. I'm guessing it's cold there. I don't know if it is, but where there's penguins, I assume it's chilly because I watched a lot of Chilly Willy the Penguin as a kid. But I think that this is likely, if I don't move, it's going to be hot. I was talking to my friend in Dallas this morning. He's with We the Free. Pete, Pete, he's an activist, an animal rights activist. We met him at AVA together. And I was talking with him today, and he's in Dallas, and he's hashtag van life. And man, he is sweating. He is he's talking about maybe driving away for the summer, but it's...
Van life with no AC, it's not good.
Anyway. I'm sure he has AC, but I mean, you don't want to. It's limited resources, right? There's only so much. I guess I don't know. He's saying it's hot. I'm going with him. But
I feel bad for the cows out there, but it was hot today at my workplace. The AC wasn't working that well during surgery. I did 25 surgeries today, and today's surgery audiobook was Merchants of Doubt: How a Handful of Scientists Obscured the Truth on Issues from Tobacco Smoke to Global Warming. And it so reminded me of what we deal with animal exploitation in the veterinary profession and animal research, and how all of these merchants of doubt are acting to defend antiquated practices that exploit animals. And there was one quote. So usually I listen to an audiobook, and then if I really, really love the book, I will get it on Kindle, and then I will like go through it and take notes and highlight and all of the things.
yeah.
This quote I loved, and I'm probably going to use it a lot. And it says, research shows that regulation is an effective means to stimulate technological innovation. That is to say, if you want the market to do its magic, if you want businesses to provide the goods and services that people need, the best way to do that, at least in terms of pollution prevention, appears paradoxically to be to mandate it. David Hunshell is one of America's leading historians of technology. Recently, he and his colleagues at Carnegie Mellon University have turned their attention to the question of regulation and technological innovation. In an article published in 2005, it says regulation as the mother of invention, based on his research of his student, Margaret Taylor. And they examined the question of what drives innovation in environmental control technology. It is well established that the lack of immediate financial benefits leads companies to underinvest in R&D, and this general problem is particularly severe when it comes to pollution control, because pollution prevention is a public good, not well reflected in the market price of goods and services. The incentives for private investment are weak. Competitive forces just don't provide enough justification for long-term investment required. There is a lack of driving demand. So I think that
are you
applies.
Trying to tell me that the invisible hand of capitalism, as envisioned by Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations, is all hooey?
I'm saying that it prioritizes what are the incentives currently under policy, and that is not to protect resources, to protect animals, to protect the environment. It's to get the most out of the current system of incentives, which don't incentivize good stewardship over animals and our environment.
Well, sure, we know that, right? If you're not a corporate-owned animal, you have no value, right? You have no intrinsic value. If you're a wild animal, you have no value. If you were a clean river in capitalism, you have no value. A forest that isn't chopped down, just a living forest, has no value because it doesn't have a monetary unit ascribed to it, right? So, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. And also, it just stands to reason as we look at capitalism, we see that if you make investment in capital, you'd like to make a healthy return on that capital investment, and you're not going to innovate because you'll actually, in the case of like car industries, they've subdued invention. They've bought patents and killed them because they haven't made the money back on their current investments. So literally hindering advancements. Where would we be without? It's like it's funny because people always, where would we be without capitalism? I don't know. Probably on the moon. We might be on Mars by now.
Well, let's introduce the topic of today, which is monkeys.
Yes.
And
I've wanted to talk about monkeys for a while, Crystal, because of Houston, Space City, the whole thing. I really want to talk about monkeys, space monkeys, and how they're being used. But we finally came upon it because of something that happened last week at the Nuremberg Zoo, where some baboons were treated, I think, unkindly. And I hope maybe, Blue, can you roll the first clip so we can hear that?
And a zoo in Germany has drawn widespread condemnation and anger after it said that it killed 12 healthy baboons. The announcement has attracted protests and a criminal complaint against its management. The Tiergarten Nuremberg Zoo first announced the plans to kill baboons back in February 2024, alleging that it didn't have enough space to house them. The zoo further added that it examined offers to take in some of the animals but was unable to make any of them work. The plan drew the ire of animal lovers and activists who lodged protests in front of the zoo earlier this week after it closed for the day for unspecified operational reasons. 7 zoo activists even climbed the walls of the zoo to prevent the killings but were shortly detained after.
So activists were out there trying to get them to stop from killing these baboons, but they killed them anyway. And Crystal, how did they kill those baboons? Did they euthanize them?
They shot them. Yeah. Which isn't a recommended method of killing animals in zoos. Usually you anesthetize them. I mean, I would have liked to see them, give them like maybe a treat that causes them to go to sleep. And then you could potentially, once they're asleep, captive bolt them. Or, maybe, but if you need to kill them at all, like that's the big thing.
I was going to say, like,
created a situation where you need to kill healthy baboons, healthy primates. It's not good for the zoo industry to show that poor level of animal stewardship.
So they had an overcrowding, though, Crystal. And I mean, I guess, like, how do we get to the? So there's a few things, right? Just to unpack very quickly, because we're not.
Yeah, there's so many things wrong with this story.
But they shot the baboons and they've fed them to predators. There are only 12 of them. I don't know how many meals they could make out of.
Yeah. Waste
monkey.
not, want not.
Right, I guess so. Right, except I guess they plucked out the pellets and to get the flesh for the cats and whoever they were feeding these animals to. But like, aren't there a couple other things maybe preventatively we might have prevented this? I mean, we got to a point where we had 12 too many baboons. What could we have done differently as a veterinarian? What would you recommend? Maybe
could have separated them, could have done vasectomies on the males. From what I understand, I guess Germans don't like to prevent breeding because they view that as, unfairly restrictive or something. But you could vasectomize them and they could breed just fine.
They could continue to think they're breeding, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of a ridiculous situation that the zoo got itself in, and really should cause the public to question the practices of zoos if that's what they're doing. We're led to believe that they're all about research and conservation and educating the public to have, compassion and empathy for other animals. But this seems
this
not
isn't
good.
It. Yeah, and so we were talking about the baboons on our other shows, and so speaking of research, these are supposed to be research institutions. A lot of times, these zoos, like the Nuremberg Zoo or the Tiergarten in German, and we started talking about how humans use monkeys in research all the time, and the use of these experiments, the use of monkeys in experiments, began in the 20th century, and they were tied to colonial trade routes and military interests. In the 50s and 60s, primates were being used in Cold War era space and radiation research, and expanded to neuroscience and drug testing. And today, we're still using them.
We haven't been experimenting on animals for thousands and thousands of years. Isn't there always the argument of why we should eat animals? Because we've been doing that forever.
Always been done this way.
We can't use the argument of like we haven't been experimenting on animals forever, so why? I don't know. I guess it doesn't work both ways.
I guess like human beings have probably been experimenting on animals for a long time, but primates seem to have always occupied a little bit of a different station for humans. Something about their faces. We look at their faces, we recognize ourselves in them, I guess. And I don't know. They're not like us though. Most monkeys, like the owl monkey and some of the other species we'll talk about, they're separated from humanity by about 40 million years. So we like to think they're just like us, which allows us to experiment on them, but then we justify experimenting on them by saying they're nothing like us. And so we're going to get into that a little bit more, but another little wrinkle in this that I must mention is that most of the research that we see on these monkeys, the most invasive, the Dr. Mengele style, like the really nasty stuff you've heard of, and the kind of more mundane stuff, is almost entirely funded by your taxes. That I think that's particularly problematic.
To help to go to these big corporations.
Mhm.
And it's questionable whether that is the wisest use of resources when we could potentially be funding access to diagnostics, more epidemiological research in the
Mhm.
field, which has led to great advancements. Right now, so many people are denied access to care, access to diagnostics. So many of our companion animals are. We're giving the animals up to the shelter in huge numbers because we can't afford veterinary care for our animals. Meanwhile, $24 billion a year goes to fund animal experimentation. What's the point of developing new treatments and cures if people don't have access to them?
Yeah.
And
What
how
is the point?
much would we be able to discover if we actually did diagnostics and tracked the data and did good epidemiological studies on populations?
Yeah, a good point. And I also would like to, the fact that we have AI and we can do all of these things. Every time I read about the alternatives to testing, I say alternatives when I think the preferable way of doing it would be not testing on animals. We have AI models, organs on chips, stem cell research, all sorts of advancements that we've cracked in the last 20 years or the last 75, as the case may be. And we're just not using them as much because, well, this is the way it's always been done. And
because we incentivize
yeah.
vivarium-based research. This is research in labs on knockout mice, on colonies of animals, which it's arguable whether this is the wisest use of resources. When we're just, and it's also like a research. We only have so many scientists, right? And I think they're stuck doing research that isn't very inspiring, that does lead to a lot of compassionate fatigue and burnout. And I've spoken to so many scientists who ended up leaving their field because they're like, I didn't get into this to just experiment on rats all day. And
Yeah.
that's a brain drain that we suffer because of that too.
Yeah, well said. I mean, it is, that brings up another topic about how traumatic it is also to these primates, right? The human primate is also traumatized. There was this amazing film when I worked for PETA. They made me watch this film called Test Subjects, and it was all about just the human beings, those who dropped out of school, those who finished school, and having to experiment on these animals and what they went through because of it. And man, they're suffering as well. I know a lot of activists don't like to mention the human toll, but I think we would be remiss in not mentioning how.
I think that's the most important thing because I think it was one of the most compelling arguments for abolishing slavery was like, look at what this is doing to our white boys who have to work on these slave ships. That was a really profound argument for the time for why we should not harm others. And
Well, yeah, how it
for
turns us
today.
into monsters, how it turns people into monsters when they're kind of forced into this hierarchy. I mean, there's a thing about how feminism helps men too. Like men are suffering under patriarchy as well, and it's just not immediately apparent. But when you think about it for half a second, it becomes apparent. Well, it all started back in 1947 with Hazleton Laboratories, right, in Vienna, Virginia. It's funny, I spent a lot of time in Vienna, Virginia.
Oh.
Yeah, I've been to Vienna, Virginia a lot. I used to live out there, and they started out with toxicology testing, pharmaceutical safety, and biomedical research. And they became the earliest large-scale importers and users of non-human primates for research in the United States. And they became one of the biggest contract research organizations specializing in animal testing for pharmaceutical and chemical companies. Most of the monkeys came from Asia and Africa, especially the rhesus macaques, which we hear about all the time. It's always rhesus macaques and marmosets, it seems, these days.
Yeah, and Charles Rivers Laboratories, founded the same year. Of course, that's a big one. Funds the AVMA Humane Ending Symposium, which I was barred from attending as an AVMA member because I disagreed with the mass killing of animals via heat stroke. And there's some news articles about that, but they're huge in the field, and they've got a lot of issues. As Worldwide Primates is another one, founded in 1978, and we'll go into hopefully these companies during this episode and what has happened to them over the years. But yeah, Hazelton Labs was the first commercial primate testing company in the U.S. So,
well, the thing about it, though, when we tend to think that these companies have been here forever, and I think that's going to be a recurring theme, that these companies have not been here forever. We can take them down. We can fight them and encourage them, let's say, to change their ways. People tend to think because the human being only lasts a little under 100 years, we think that because a corporation is about the same age that they've been here forever, and that's just false thinking. And I don't know. We're going to get into the question of the day, though, is are we safer or more at risk because of monkey research? And let's get down into this. So let's talk about the polio vaccine, I guess, first, right?
Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing, like that's the first thing you always hear from the pro animal experimentation people is like the polio vaccine. We got the polio vaccine because of our experiments on primates and how important that was. But the truth is we got the polio vaccine because we experimented on orphan children.
Yeah.
And primates actually delayed the research into this thing because earlier researchers thought that polio was a respiratory disease. This was because monkey models, primarily rhesus macaques, were the virus caused paralysis when injected directly into the brain and spinal cord, but not when ingested. So as a result, scientists incorrectly believed natural infection occurred through the nervous system.
Right. And it's crazy you say that because the polio vaccine story is mistold constantly. When you go to every college campus has a care and use page on their campus website. This is not something that they even hide. When they have animal labs, they have a care and use page. They have to. And so when you look at it, it always mentions polio every time.
Yeah. But it spreads through the GI tract and typically via the fecal oral route, not through direct nervous system exposure. So it delayed support for the oral polio vaccine. Early vaccines were developed using an inactivated virus with Jonas Salk's 1955 vaccine. Albert Sabin's oral vaccine using live attenuated virus showed strong promise, but initial tests in monkeys were inconclusive or negative. Monkeys didn't develop the same immune response as humans when given the oral vaccine. So researchers and funders dismissed and delayed support for Sabin's oral polio vaccine, despite it ultimately becoming the most effective tool for eradicating polio in many countries.
Right. We still see it in use today. Their little eyedropper that they put, you saw it in Palestine. They had polio outbreaks because of war, famine, and disease. And they, my mother told me that when she was a kid, they used to put it on a sugar cube and line up all the kids and give them a little sugar cube. And that's how you got your vaccine.
Yeah. And I don't know, you've listened to the various Joe Rogan sphere and RFK, there's kind of the controversy with the polio vaccine among them is like polio was just going away anyway, and the vaccine didn't actually end it. That's like one argument that's made by a lot of people, but who knows?
Who knows? I mean, Mitch McConnell was a survivor. I don't know. I'm old enough that when I was younger, I knew a lot of old people who had been polio survivors and had mild forms of paralysis. And Mitch McConnell is still serving in the Senate. He's been there for, I think, too long. But he's a polio survivor. It's one of the reasons why he was one of the only Republicans to not vote to confirm RFK Jr. because of this divide.
Wow. Well, because of the use of monkey models in polio, vaccine development became extremely expensive and logistically challenging. It depended on mass importation of monkeys, and thousands were killed. And it distracted from investing in cell culture methods, which eventually became the gold standard. So,
And that was championed by Salk too, right? He would
Yeah.
use, and it kind of those cell culture examples. I think they were using chicken embryos. Is that how that worked?
I don't know. I don't know
It's
what they're
something
doing.
about how they use chicken embryo. I'm not exactly. I listened to a podcast about that once about how they do it. It's still not totally ideal, but we're talking about something that happened in like 51 or something, 54. I mean, it's weird to me that every time you talk about animal testing, they bring out this polio story, mistell the story,
Hmm.
and change it up to make it sound like it's animal testing saved the world, and yet it's not exactly true. Well, it's not true their version of it. And what have you done for me lately? I'd like to know. It's been 75 years since the polio vaccine. I mean, are we still beating that drum? Like that,
Yeah.
if something good, even if we take their, if it's something good happened 75 years ago and we're still doing it, even though we haven't had any good results since, it seems odd.
I highly recommend reading what is the book? Polio: An American Story by David Oshinsky. This is a book I read.
Mhm.
Really, really interesting. But I kind of want to do more research into what was Charles Rivers Labs and Hazelton Labs doing with regard to the polio vaccine. Because you have a couple of companies that obviously started Primate experimentation, these two companies,
Mm.
and they
Mm.
really like gained power, gained a foothold, and shaped the culture of research in this very particular narrow way. And I think that's something that we have to question a
Well, I
bit
don't
more.
know for sure, Crystal, but I
Yeah,
would bet you $500 that they were.
$500.
I would bet you $500 that what they were doing through all this was insisting that this was the only way, and taking research grants from the government in order to have more monkeys and breed more monkeys. If you can't find a cure for polio, problem is you haven't killed enough monkeys. Looks like we've got to breed more monkeys. Of course, that's their business. They're monkey salesmen, like that's what they were doing, right? And
Yeah,
I mean, this will tie back to the NIH too. I wonder
yeah.
when did the NIH, they weren't around in the 50s, right?
They were around earlier actually.
Oh.
And I had kind of pulled up that a while. They had started before that. There, like a lot of the monkey research and everything was done in like university labs and everything. And it was a lot of government funded stuff.
Hmm.
But here, let me see if I can just real fast. I might not be able to pull this up.
Well, NIH,
But
well, NIH did actually, they're still the number one funded. That's who funds all of the animal research. And it's a weird feeling right now because the current political climate is defunding NIH. And that means you hear people all the time saying, oh, they're ending cancer research or canceling cancer research. And I have mixed feelings about that because I
mhm.
don't want to stop cancer research, but I know that when they say cancer research, what they're talking about is giving animals cancer intentionally so that they can experiment on them. And half of me is like, maybe they should stop. Maybe they
Yeah.
should stop researching the cancer because
It's
that's
a
just,
weird like attack on universities, attack on
yes.
research. But at the same time, we can celebrate the end of animal research, but like also this anti-intellectualism, anti-science thing isn't good either.
Yeah.
So the National Institutes of Health was established in 1887, but expanded its primate research in the 1930s through 1950s.
Mm.
Um,
So they
so
were even back then they were the conduit for cash, and they would
yeah.
that's who funded. That's how
Experiments were typically conducted in-house by universities or the military, not outsourced to private companies like they are now.
they
So,
were getting those monkeys from somewhere. And all right, so
yeah.
speaking of monkeys, we're going to go over the biohazard scale, the BSL. Before we do, I want to just tell everybody who we are. I'm Skyjack Morgan. Over there, that's Dr. Crystal Heath, DVM, the veterinarian. We're talking about monkey testing here on Monkey Business Monday. Just joking. It's Vegan World Radio at kpft.org, streaming live, and 90.1 on the FM dial in Houston. Blue, would you mind rolling that second clip for the next segment?
One of 43 escaped monkeys in South Carolina has been safely recovered. The primates escaped a research facility in Beaufort County last week. Local residents were warned to close windows, lock doors, and not approach the animals. Officials at the facility say the monkeys are not carrying any dangerous diseases. 42 still remain on the run.
So 42 were on the run, but 43 escaped in Yamasee, South Carolina. It was kind of an insane thing. Someone a new employee left a door open, and this research facility let 43 monkeys go in South Carolina. They were all over the place. They got up to a whole bunch of monkey business. I'm pretty sure these were rhesus macaques. Yeah, they were rhesus macaques. That was back in November 2024. This isn't ancient history. By January 2025, it took them, November 2024 they got loose, and January 2025 they rounded them all up.
That's a long time.
That was a long time to have 42 monkeys running around. They had a hard time catching them. They did catch them all, and they apparently were in good health when they did finally get them, if you believe the standard narrative, which I will do in this case. But
I mean, I spoke to a vet who worked at that lab
really?
a while ago, well before this incident happened, and this person told me this place is awful. I worked there. The climate control doesn't work. The cages are broken. The monkeys are always getting out. They're always biting people. They cannot keep employees, so they can't train good, knowledgeable staff, and they're constantly retraining new employees on how to clean things properly. Nobody's cleaning things right. She was doing surgeries and different experiments on monkeys, and their livers were all cirrhosed. And it's like, what is even the value of this experimentation when these monkeys have been through so much research that they're already like diseased with liver cirrhosis and all of these things? How can we tell anything from these diseased, captive, highly stressed monkeys? So she ended up quitting and ended up doing some important work, blowing the whistle on various labs. But a lot of vets, are afraid to speak out against the research industry. And you have two types of vets: the vets who are afraid to say things about the welfare concerns, and then there's the vets who are like, well, this lab looks fine, all the cages are clean, I don't see monkeys with screws in their head like the PETA pictures, so this must be a good lab that I'm in. And they bought the narrative, and they believe that they're doing difficult but necessary work to improve science.
Yeah, they're towing the line because of brainwashing. It's culty. And talking to the pro animal research veterinarians, it's like talking to somebody who's a member of the Church of Scientology. Like it's very, you see the glazed look in their eyes. They've got their talking points. They're very slick. And there's the ones who are the talkers, who like they have their talking points down. And you ask a question, and they just rattle on for 5 minutes on their script that they've memorized. And there's no critical thinking, no engagement that can be had with those people. Think of that talent could be used in so many other ways, and yet that's who gets.
If we can get them on our side,
yeah, exactly. That's what I was just thinking. If I could get them on our side, how great would I'd really appreciate someone that could rattle off all the facts and get really good at just learning it by rote. I love that. Well, I wonder now. So, of course, when I heard this story back in November on my YouTube channel, I was reporting on this, and I was like, okay, this is the story of 28 days later, and people forget. Absolutely. People know, right? People know it as a zombie movie, but they forget that in the beginning, an ALF animal rights style liberation group goes in and wants to free the monkeys, or I think they're chimpanzees in the movie, and one gets bitten, and that starts, and then it's like 28 days later, everyone's dead. So I want to know about these biosafety levels. So can you kind of walk me through it?
So you have biosafety level 1, and this is used in teaching labs in basic microbiology classes. You probably any science class you've been in was like biosafety level 1. There's no special containment required, just standard precautions like hand washing, don't eat or drink in the lab, that sort of thing. Then there's BSL-2, and this is used for clinical diagnostics and research on moderate risk pathogens. So you must use things like biological safety cabinets with handling anything that can be aerosolized, and personnel must be trained in pathogen handling. And I remember going to school, it's like when you're in your chemistry class or your biology class, they're like, oh, hey, we're having a training for BSL-2, BSL, you can be BSL-2, BSL-3 certified if you take this class, and blah, blah, blah. Then there is BSL-3. This is work with aerosolized, transmissible, and potentially fatal diseases. And this requires negative air pressure rooms, sealed windows, and special ventilation systems. So like the virus can't escape from that lab. It's, pressurized that way. And so access is restricted, and workers will wear respirators and follow these strict entry protocols. And then there's BSL-4, and this is reserved for the most dangerous agents like Ebola or Marburg, which can cause hemorrhagic fevers. And it's conducted in isolated facilities, separate buildings, or underground labs, and it requires positive pressure space suits. So you're wearing a suit, just like you're going into an outer space. You do chemical showers, complete facility sterilization before exiting. So there's like a gray room where you go in to this gray room with your spacesuit after you've gone into the lab, and you shower.
This is the lab in 28 days later.
Exactly.
This is like the Outbreak lab in the movie The Outbreak with the monkey that gets everybody sick. Like they got the hazmat suit looking guys, and they got the shower and like the lab with the one in the movies. That's BSL-4, I guess.
So there's very few examples exist globally. So there's the USA like Army research infectious disease thing in Fort Derrick, Maryland. There's the CDC's BSL-4 lab in Atlanta, Georgia, the National Microbiology Laboratory in Winnipeg, Canada. And there's this new facility in the center of the United States in Manhattan, Kansas. And this is the National Bio and Agro Defense Facility.
That's number 4. That's on the level 4.
It does all of the BSL levels, but it has a BSL-4 area, and it's the first ever lab that's a BSL-4 large animal laboratory. So you're talking cows, pigs, horses in this lab, and they spent $1.25 billion on this lab, and this is to replace the Plum Island Animal Disease Center in New York.
Well, I love cows, chickens, pigs, and all the animals on Earth. But today's Monkey Business Monday on Vegan World Radio. So how are we? Even though we have all of these precautions, I hear these they give it a fancy name, BSL 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like a DEFCON 1, 4 or cancer 1 through 4, whatever. But we still have these outbreaks, don't we? And there's all these we still have. It's not as far-fetched what we see in the movies where there's an outbreak and a monkey gets loose. I mean, we have a monkey we got 43 monkeys that got loose out of at Yamasee, South Carolina late last year.
Happens all the time. But there happens all the time. We don't even hear about it. When it's not 43, it's just like one here and there.
Or when they contain it really quickly, or if just one person gets a little sick, I bet you we don't hear about it. But we do hear about a couple, and I kind of want to go over those. You want to go through cases? I want to talk about, you mentioned Marburg. I want to talk about that.
Yeah, so Marburg virus came about 1967. Actually, August 8th, 1967 was the first time that a laboratory worker in Marburg, West Germany began showing symptoms. So these were African green monkeys imported from Uganda for polio vaccine production.
Okay, but it's in 1967. Vaccine. It's always back to polio. They want to get polio vaccine production in 1967, and they're going to do it in West Germany at the time. 67 is West Germany.
Beringwerk Pharmaceutical Factory. So this
green monkeys, I don't even know them.
The first known human case of Marburg virus. So the first human case came about from basically a lab leak. So the human infection occurred when 25 workers handling blood and tissues from infected monkeys, and 6 secondary person-to-person transmission happened. So it's like, okay, the people were infected, but it could transmit person to person.
Already,
and
yeah.
7 people died. Animal caretakers, ironically, did not become infected. So this is the first known outbreak of Marburg virus.
So the people handling, so caretakers didn't get infected, but the people handling the blood and tissues got, okay, that's not that odd, right? But it's weird that they gave it to people right away. And this is the first outbreak of filovirus, which is the same family as Ebola, which means it says they died 6. How many people died? 7? How many?
Total of, what does it say? 25 workers infected. 7 people died.
7 people died. Yeah. And Ebola is a horrible way to die. It's really bad. It's
Same
hemorrhaging.
Thing,
it's
bleeding. From orifices. Yeah. If you read The Hot Zone, such a good book, and it goes in detail about dying from Marburg virus.
So in this case, I think that this would be chalked up as maybe not worth it to take monkeys and develop vaccines with them, because this is how 7 people died horrifically in Germany, a place that.
Yeah, but that's not the only case, of course.
That's not the only one. Yeah, and so this next one, the simian herpes B virus. And this is a little older, actually, but
1932.
Yeah, tell me about this one, because it's the first time I think someone dies of herpes or something.
So yeah, macaque monkeys used in research, bites, scratches, or mucosal exposure to infected monkey fluids happened. So 80% of people die if they're untreated.
Oh my gosh!
From the simian herpes B virus. It's So yeah, what happened in 1932? Dr. William Brebner, a young pathologist at NYU School of Medicine, was working with rhesus macaques in a lab when he was bitten or scratched. A few weeks later, he developed severe neurological symptoms, headache, fever, paralysis, and died rapidly of encephalomyelitis.
Which is basically like it. Well, I mean, you always bury it, like, because you're the doctor, but I like to lay it on thick with this. Encephalomyelitis. It's a lot like meningitis, which I think is the scariest way to die. It is the inflammation of your brain and spinal cord, so that you basically turn into a mush, but you're still aware of what's happening, but you have no control over any part of your body, and then you die.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap. I don't want to die that way. But this was the discovery of herpes B, huh?
So yay, we discovered a thing. So therefore,
we discovered a new herpes. We could have never discovered that herpes. That would have been cool. We could have never discovered it. We could have never discovered it. That would have been fine.
We would never know if we hadn't tested on monkeys. So
great.
Yeah.
They isolated a novel herpes virus from this brain tissue, from his brain tissue, the guy who died, William Brebner. And
this became the foundational event in understanding the zoonotic potential of macaque herpes virus. And it sparked biosafety changes in laboratories working with non-human primates, and herpes B is now classified as a BSL-3 agent due to its lethality in humans.
I think this is also kind of one of those examples of how different they are from us. They get herpes B, and they just get like what we consider herpes. They get oral lesions, they get cold sores. But if we get their herpes, we get encephalomyelitis. And die 80% of the time. Like, clearly we're not the same animal, so why are we testing our stuff on them?
There have been fewer than 100 documented human cases, almost all involving macaque researchers or handlers, with the majority resulting in death or serious neurological damage unless treated immediately with antiviral medications.
So, Krista, on a personal note, does any of this, because when I read this stuff, I think, oh my gosh, I see a wild animal. I do not want to touch a wild animal ever. I don't want to touch. I see these people going out into meeting friendly kangaroos and stuff out in the outback, and I don't want to meet those friendly kangaroos. I see a squirrel in my garden. I'm like, I'm happily not touching that squirrel.
I feel that way about human beings because I'm more likely to get hurt or sick from a fellow human being than another animal. So when I was younger, I had lots of bats where I lived, and I'd find bats on the ground and would pick them up and stuff. I survived. Do not recommend. Please do not pick up bats that are on the ground.
Good.
They have rabies. You can get rabies. But I lived. So
and also
I also grew up on
they have lots of diseases, bats that we can get. Like they're not.
Don't do it. Coronaviruses, all the things.
All sorts of stuff. But
I also grew up on unpasteurized milk, and I don't recommend that either.
All right, but the question is, I feel like we shouldn't be interacting with wild animals at all. And now hanging out with you and knowing more and learning more about pandemics and epidemics and all this stuff and talking with epidemiologists and blah, 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 I find that the people getting sick of bird flu are the people hanging out with chickens and cows. The people getting sick of herpes B and having their brains shut down on them are people hanging out with rhesus macaques.
Well, exploiting them for sure. Yeah, I think.
I guess not just hanging out, being near them, interacting with them for any purpose seems a recipe for disaster.
Anytime you have large numbers of animals confined, you just have this potential for like a nuclear meltdown of virus. You have all of this meat and, protein packed together with viruses that are looking for a host. And
mosquitoes and all sorts, and bats and raccoons
but one-on-one people interacting with wildlife, not eating them. If you don't eat, you rarely don't pester them, don't make them bite you. But I think there can be some benefit from people going out into the wilderness and studying them from a distance.
Touching them. This is what I mean. Like
they come up to you and.
Are you supposed to pet the wild animal? No, leave them alone. They don't want to be touched. They don't want to be touched by some oddly shaped hairless ape that doesn't look like these. We're awkward animals.
Have you ever seen capybara? They love to be touched, even the wild ones.
Capybara, maybe there are some exceptions, like dogs and cats even, but like by and large, I think the rule that those are exceptions to the rules, and there's always are. But I think the rule should be don't touch animals in the wild. You're probably.
I don't like rules. Rules are made to be broken.
You could break them. You're the veterinarian, but I don't think that the layman should be out there touching animals and poking and prodding them. Anyway, all right. So that's the I think the scariest one is that one, 1932. I think
the most angering one. You mean? Because
it makes me angry, but it also like dying of encephalomyelitis. I think is particularly harrowing to consider. All right, so in 1969, just 30 years or a couple of years after the herpes, what was the first one? The Marburg virus. A couple of years after Lassa virus, which is the name of a city, right? Lassa is the name of a city in Africa. What happened there?
So in January 1969, a missionary nurse named Laura Wine fell gravely ill in Lassa, Nigeria. She had symptoms resembling typhoid or malaria, fever, weakness, and eventually bleeding, and she died shortly after. Not long after, a second nurse, Charlotte Shaw, who cared for Laura, also became severely ill and died. A third nurse, Penny Pineo, was infected too, but she survived, and her illness was more prolonged, and she was eventually evacuated to the Yale Arbovirus Research Unit in New Haven, Connecticut for treatment and diagnosis.
What'd they find?
The Yale virologists, Carl Johnson and Dr. Jordi Cassius Ariet, isolated and novel arenavirus from Penny's blood and tissues. From
Another brand new virus coming out.
Nurses. The virus was unknown at the time and extremely dangerous. While working with the isolate, Cassius accidentally infected himself. He fell seriously ill, but survived, possibly because of convalescent plasma that he received from Penny, the surviving nurse, which was rushed to Yale and used in his treatment. The virus was named Lassa virus after the town where its first fatal case occurred. So it is carried by the multi-mammate rat, a common rodent in West Africa, and transmission to humans occurs via contact with rodent urine, feces, or saliva, or human to human through bodily fluids, especially in healthcare settings.
So it still kills a lot of people in Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Liberia.
100,000 to 300,000 infections per year, with roughly 5,000 deaths annually.
Oh my gosh. And severe disease can involve hemorrhage, liver damage, and death, particularly in pregnant women. I wonder why the women die so easily from it.
Well, got lots of things going on when you're pregnant. So
this is a lot like Ebola as well. They're saying that this is a viral hemorrhagic fever predating widespread knowledge of Ebola. It highlighted risks to healthcare workers, especially in resource-limited settings. It also spurred the development of biosafety level 4 labs and improved containment protocols for handling dangerous pathogens. I guess maybe we do need protocols. This guy accidentally injected himself with this thing, but it just goes to show. I guess the lesson here is that we needed extra biosecurity on these labs, because he's sitting there studying at Yale. He's studying, well, you sure got something funny, and then injects himself with the isolate by accident somehow, and immediately feels sick. It's like getting bit by a snake. So, all right. So that's like how we get to BSL-4. But of course, the one that we have to talk about too is the actual Ebola.
That's the most exciting one.
Yeah, it was. I remember Ebola back in the 20. It was right when I moved to Vegas. Everyone was talking about Ebola, because when there are outbreaks and stuff, Vegas freaks out because they know that it's going to mean tourism goes down. A lot of people are congregating in Las Vegas. There's usually a lot of people around each other. Everyone was talking about Ebola, but before then, in the 70s, something happened.
Yeah, so in this 1976, it was first identified in Zaire. But the most interesting thing is the Hazelton Labs outbreak in Reston, Virginia. This was in 1989. Macaques were imported from the Philippines to Hazelton's Reston, Virginia unit, and were found to carry this Reston virus. It's lethal to monkeys, but it didn't actually cause disease in humans. But this led to the U.S. Army actually came in to deal with this, because they're like, these monkeys have Ebola. They're all dying. Ebola just amplifies in their blood and tissue. So you have this facility with 450 monkeys,
and they're all covered in blood. Everyone's bleeding out of their eyes.
Ebola. Yeah. And the story as told in the Hot Zone is just harrowing.
This is Operation Monkey Drop, right?
Yeah. And this is where they needed to call in the army, because they needed people who were willing to die for their country. So 100 cynomolgus macaques were imported from the Philippines to this facility in Reston, Virginia. The army comes in, they kill them all. All these army people are going in there. They are euthanizing the monkeys. They're collecting samples. 2 veterinarians were in charge of it. Lieutenant Nancy Jacks and Colonel Gerald Jacks, husband and wife veterinarian team, led the containment and eradication effort. You have a building with 450 monkeys that are full of Ebola. How on earth do you decontaminate this? Well, they actually like scrubbed it up, got rid of all the monkeys, and then they put in these like sunbeam electric frying pans
What?
full of, and they put these formaldehyde blocks in them, and they tent the building and gas it for 3 days, and that's supposed to kill everything.
Oh, because the formaldehyde won't just kill the monkeys; it'll also kill the virus.
Yeah, no, we're not killing the monkeys. The monkeys were already individually euthanized by the army. So after the monkey bodies are gone, after you clean up all the blood and poop and everything, then you do this sunbeam electric pan formaldehyde gas situation. But
how is this not a movie?
soon after, the lab then started to import monkeys again from the same place in the Philippines, and in 1990 had another outbreak at the same facility.
Did they call the army again?
I forget what happened. I think there was a little bit of that. Yeah. Ultimately,
yeah, it did. It happened again. It was another out in 1990 in which 4 handlers developed antibodies. I think they had to call the army again. It's wild.
Yeah, I forget what from the book. They might have just handled it themselves because they didn't want to deal with the army again. But they ultimately did close down. They later became Covance, later part of LabCorp Covance, now Fortrea, and this ultimately ended up like dinging Charles Rivers Labs,
but they're in
and
Texas,
Worldwide
the one...
Primates to everybody was like, we are dinging all of you guys for this. So that.
But I mean, the second one was in Alice, Texas, under another 100 of Hazelton's Reston unit. Amazing to me. So let me ask you this, though. You said the word euthanize, and I know we take that word really seriously. Did the army come in and inject each monkey individually? I thought maybe they let the formaldehyde do the job.
No,
did they? So they
injected each one individually. They injected them with anesthesia, and then they drew blood from them, and then they injected the euthanasia solution, and then took out their livers and hearts and took samples from a bunch of them. Yeah.
So they did a better job than the Nuremberg Zoo. Like, you'd think the army would be the one who would come in and shoot the monkeys. Like, you hear the army's coming with spacesuits, I'm thinking gunplay. But no, they did it the right way, which was euthanizing them with the most humane method they could given the time frame and all that. They gave them a little happy juice and they went to sleep. And that was still, they couldn't figure that out over at the Nuremberg Zoo when they had to kill their monkeys. They're baboons. But the baboons are monkeys, type of monkey. So, yeah, okay.
So, caught in all of this, Charles River Labs, Worldwide Primates were also penalized by the CDC during this period of time for their various quarantine and regulatory violations. The CDC suspended the primate import licenses for all 3 companies during the investigation. How long, I'd love to know, because since then there's been I attended the monkey trial in Miami a couple of months ago. That was really interesting, in which monkeys were imported from Cambodia. And they weren't captive bred. They were just capturing monkeys out in the wild. A lot of research veterinarians were suspicious of this because why are these captive bred monkeys coming in with pellet bullet wounds?
Oh God, jeez. And
why are they being shot in captivity? No,
why do they have lice? So
this just we think that animal research is done all on the up and up, and it's highly regulated and all of this stuff. When you actually talk to the vets who are doing this research, who are the ones who aren't indoctrinated by the cult and who are willing to speak out, you realize there's so much hanky stuff going on with this industry. This is not good science, and maybe we should prioritize better research, epidemiological based research, field research, not Bavarian based research.
And like it does tend to reinforce. So I support the Cargo Act. It's the Cease Animal Research Grants Overseas Act. That's always it's co-sponsored by a representative in Nevada and California, and they are trying to get it to be, and it's bipartisan, it's Republican and Democrat. And I call once a month-ish my congressperson and ask them to support the Cargo Act, try to co-sponsor it, get it on the floor. It hasn't, the way a bill becomes a law, it hasn't gone up for a vote yet, but it's trying to, like, we're trying to get it up and going. And if you care about this, you can call your congressperson and mention the Cargo Act, the Ceased Animal Research Grants Overseas Act. And all it does, it says that they aren't going to take our money and give it to grants doing the research in other countries. Because even though we just spent an hour talking about how our regulations don't necessarily do very well for the monkeys, for us, for public health, but they're far worse in other countries. The photographic evidence and video evidence of what happens to monkeys overseas with our tax dollars is, it's hard to look at. And
well, we are reaching the end of the hour, but if you have missed any of the show, you can always hear it again on the archives at kpft.org. So please tune in again for Vegan